So the talk for this morning, I was reading an article by the teacher Gil Fronsdal, who's one of my favorites, and you can find his talks on his website. He's out in California. I think it's called what?
The website is Audio Dharma.
Audio Dharma, yes. Yeah, it's Insight Retreat Center, and there's tons of content online, so I encourage you to do that. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about personally lately that this article really touched into was how to communicate about the practice of meditation as something that's not benefits in the future. So that's often how we approach the practice, is that if I meditate, I will eventually feel calm or more concentrated or nicer. And there's something to that, to the repetition of the practice and the fruits of the practice growing over time. We can kind of think of it as planting seeds and watering the seeds. But if we think about it that way only, that we have to grow a tree before we get any fruit. I mean, some trees take years to bear fruit. So what are we doing? And what are because that's not necessarily the underpinning of these teachings in the Buddhist tradition, is that our benefit is only right now in this moment. We can only feel the fruits of the practice in this moment. The freedom, the liberation, the freedom from suffering is only available here. So why this sort of dichotomy of, well, it must not be here because I have to grow a tree first. Okay, so anyway, he's a translator of Buddhist texts, and he was mentioning that in the Chinese, they translate the words for concentration and insight. So those are the two kind of, big elements of this practice, where the reason we come back to the breath or to the anchor for your practice over and over is to train the mind to stay in this moment long enough so that something can happen, right? But even the word train indicates it's not happening today. Like if I have to train for a marathon, that's like months. Well, for me, it would be decades, but this thing about concentration and insight, it can be really off-putting to think, especially for folks who have ADD. That's a lot of us these days. I have to concentrate in order to do this? Forget it. That practice must not be for me. And yet, it's how we're defining sort of our cultural definition of concentration too, which seems like pay attention, really strict. And then insight also we teach this class in the Vipassana tradition and the insight meditation tradition. So insight is vitally important. It's the lens into the nature of reality, into the nature of our humanness and the reasons we suffer and how to stop suffering and the Four Noble Truths and the whole thing is we're developing insights. And that also seems like wisdom, which we might associate with age. You see where I'm going with this? I've been thinking about that a lot. And then, as often happens, something kind of drops out of the sky. So I wanted to share this with you this morning, how the Chinese translate the words for concentration and insight in the Chinese Buddhist practice. So concentration is simply translated as stopping, and insight is translated as seeing. So stopping and seeing. Those two things are immediate. There's an immediacy to them that suggests that they're not these, capacities that we have to develop over time, but that anyone who has awareness of themselves, and human beings are uniquely outfitted with awareness that we're here, like unique among other animals, are that we're able to know, oh, we're aware that we have awareness. And so we are like uniquely qualified for this practice of stopping and seeing and sitting in meditation and gaining insights as a result of our practice, instead of being solely motivated by instinct or outside factors. So if we, think about other animals that are, it's a blessing and a curse, I think, to be a gazelle. Because when you're just grazing, you're just grazing. Like there's not this self-reflection that happens. Why am I the shortest gazelle in the herd? There isn't any of that. Why can't I run as fast as the others? But then, the lion comes and it's all instinct. No real active planning for how to avoid the lions, like these ultra high capacities, but certainly instinct is very deep, not to minimize that. But when we're not aware, then we're kind of like the gazelle. We're just, when external forces are easeful, we're easy. We're not stressed. Something external happens, all of a sudden we're stressed. And this is the hamster wheel of samsara that the Buddha talks about. Not having the capacity to be awake in this moment to the full picture of what's happening. So that's why we develop concentration and insight. So these capacities are available to us even in the most mundane situation. We can stop and see, and they function together in many ways. So stopping supports seeing. So just to kind of talk a little bit about what stopping looks like. Because if we can't pause, sometimes we talk about the mindful pause, like the creating the space. The stopping kind of precedes the pausing. And if we can't stop, then we can't see. So we can't gain those insights. So when we think about pausing, if we haven't developed a baseline capacity to notice, then we're not going to remember to stop. Have you ever had an intention to do anything really, but especially when it comes to either your meditation practice or being mindful in your everyday life? Oh, I'm going to brush my teeth mindfully every day, or I'm going to do something mindfully and then the whole week goes by. When that happens, it's often because we haven't really laid the groundwork for noticing yet, for paying attention to, oh, right, I turn on the water. I'm aware in this moment, I'm going to remember I want to do this mindfully. And then we're out in the world and it can look really wild. Like we have this practice on the cushion where we're relatively calm. We can feel the breath some of the time, and we can generate these qualities of loving kindness. And then we go into our regular life and, someone cuts us off in traffic and we get upset, or the kid or the spouse or the dog does something and we're kind of back to our old self. So we're cultivating the ability to stop by connecting our mind to our body, which is another thing that we do in this practice. So when we open those sense doors, when we're sitting, we're training the mind to feel our physical body. So our bodies from here down are like the satellite dish. And our brains, they just interpret it. And they're not even, well, I don't want to our brains are pretty cool, actually. But often they interpret signals from the body in a really basic way that's not always helpful. We have a lot of anxiety about things that are never going to happen, but the brain's kind of interpreting that way. So when we're in our formal practice, we're learning to close that feedback loop so that the body can feel things and then the mind can learn to interpret them in a more skillful way so that we can see more clearly our own reactivity to things. So that's fundamental to being able to stop, because that's usually, that's the signal. Something doesn't feel right, let's pause. You can pause at any time, and we actually should. It's a fun part of the practice to just kind of pause no matter what you're doing and feel into your body. But certainly when there's stress happening, can we have the ability to just stop, freeze? It's like that kids game where everyone's running around, freeze. We can do that with ourselves. Just stop where we are and notice what is happening right now. The sensations in the body, the train of thought. What have you been thinking for the last several minutes? That is putting us, what's the belief that's playing out? So those kind of fall into the insights category, which we can't even do that if we can't learn to pause and just stop the hamster wheel, basically. So things like making a choice, how to respond in a situation. When we can't stop, we don't have a choice about how to respond. The momentum of our habit patterns will be so strong that that's what we'll do. And this is just kind of basic human nature. So things like restraint, skillful actions aren't even really online if we can't first pause. And a lot of our insights are based on noticing how difficult that can be. So we can be aware, because we've stopped, of the momentum and how difficult it is to stop. That's actually really skillful to notice that. And over time, we begin to grow the capacity to make a different choice, to act with more restraint, or to relax through the body. We have habit patterns of tension. We might just, if we can't notice those patterns, then we're just tense all the time, reactive all the time. Our blood pressure's high and we can't seem to get it under control. Letting go, surrender, all of these things that we work on in this practice are really dependent on being able to stop. And then if we pause and we notice that momentum is so strong, we're being flooded by something, then we can look into that. That's also insight. Being able to say, wow, I'm really flooded right now by this. I'm noticing that I really don't want to do this, but here I am doing it. Or I really do want to do this, but here I am sitting on the couch. We can gain insights into our own habits of mind. So, from the Buddhist perspective, what's happening when we stop is we're working with this human instinct to cling, to hold on, to resist, which there's two sides to clinging, the grabbing and the pushing away. They're really the same thing. The aversion is the other side of the clinging. And when we're pausing, we're saying, I'm going to look at this clinging. And we know from our kind of Four Noble Truths that there is a way to stop suffering in this human life, in this very moment. And it's by letting go of clinging. And if we don't understand our clinging, then it's always hard to let go because they're kind of like human patterns that we have. But if we can't pause, then we really can't let go. So, incorporating these pauses into your everyday life and into your formal practice, which is what we're doing here. And I really encourage you to practice at home. Just taking some time out each day intentionally to say, stop. I'm going to pause or stop. I'm going to sit and watch what's happening in this mind, body, heart system. And I'm going to be open to whatever I notice. I'm going to be open to resistance to doing this in the first place. I'll be open to resistance about what's coming up. I'll be open to joy and ease and all of the other things that are kind of swirling through this system at any given moment. It's definitely not all drudgery being human. We talk about how to end suffering here, so it can feel like that sometimes. But when we examine the ways that we cling and we gain the capacity to let go, we find ourselves in our natural state of being, which is actually easeful and with many more opportunities to notice the simple joys that are part of this human life. So the insight part of the equation is the seeing, which I've talked about a little bit, like how to bring some inquiry into what we notice when we pause. And sometimes this seeing might translate to listening, to just, sometimes the phrase is often translated as clear seeing. So it's not just seeing with our typical mind of appraisal and commentary and everything. Clear seeing is seeing into the nature of what's actually happening here. And so it can involve a lot of listening without your own opinions. Like it's an openness, it's a curiosity about what is happening here. Look at all of these habit patterns. So it's sometimes often easier to have clear seeing about the world and about other people than it is about yourself. Okay, so we have to include ourselves as part of our habits as part of the phenomena that is moving through the whole world at any given time. We are also part of this. So part of the clear seeing, a key part of clear seeing, is into the nature of our own habits. And if we can see where we cling, then we can direct our practice to the letting go in those areas that are causing us suffering. So it becomes like a vehicle for insight and compassion and the deepening of the spiritual life. So it's really, I think, it's pretty profound to think about how often we're hooked into just our lives are so dependent on what's going well, what's not going well. Our ability to feel ease, to feel free, to feel happy, can think of like all the years, lifetimes, can look at people who never develop the capacity to introspect or to let go of the things they know are causing them suffering. It's profound, and it's incredibly courageous to even want to look. It's like, opening the Pandora's box and saying, what's in there? And the benefits of doing this are incredible. But it's difficult. So you just kind of want to acknowledge that too, that it's not like, oh, just fling open the Pandora's box. Everything will be great. It's learning to tune into your own sense of well-being. And so a big part of this, of the basic instructions in Buddhism, are to not do what I tell you because I'm telling you, or any teacher or any book, right? So that's, especially if you're new to this practice, it's incredibly important to realize that your basic instruction is to hear what you hear, read what you read, and see for yourself. See for yourself. That's the mantra. Does it work this way? Do you experience less suffering when you develop these capacities to stay in the present moment with things that are unpleasant? If you can stay in your meditation practice with that intense itch that you just want to scratch, right? This is low-level practice for being with unpleasantness and suffering. Can that translate into the bigger things in the world? Can I be with, the other things that are going to come our way in this human life? And there's a lot of them. So stopping and seeing sounds really kind of simple. And it is, and it's not easy. So when you're practicing this, everyone's coming at it from a different point of view, different family conditioning, different belief systems. But the great thing about Buddhism, in my opinion, is that it applies to anyone with any human being, really, because we all have these brains. We all live in this culture. It's sort of like, how do we work with these minds that can make a heaven out of hell and a hell out of heaven? So that's what this practice is about. And you can bring these insights into any spiritual tradition or none. It can be a quite secular practice of just seeing for yourself how, oh, I don't want to suffer. Other people don't want to suffer. It's very humanist, actually, to notice that and how your life can become a vehicle for compassion. And so the formal practice of meditation is just kind of an extended stopping. And the reason it becomes so important to have a formal practice of some kind is because these extended periods of concentration, even if you don't feel very concentrated, extended periods of stopping are actually rewiring your brain. So it's so wonderful that we can just point you to the internet to pull up these studies. The Buddha did not have that in his back pocket to just say, if you don't believe me, Google it. We are actually changing the physical structure of the brain so that we have more capability to pause when things get difficult. So the more we practice formally, the more capable we are of practicing in everyday life. That's why the toothbrushing and all the other things we say we're going to do, they're hard in the beginning because we forget. But if we keep coming back to it over and over, eventually it becomes a habit that is just as, just like brushing the teeth in general is hopefully a habit, but then being present for that activity can also become a habit. And if we can't let go immediately of our preoccupations, which raise your hand if you can, I would like to meet you, we can be content with looking into the nature of the preoccupied mind. So it's the point where a lot of people walk away, to be perfectly honest. A lot of people come to this practice thinking, I'll just go for a few weeks and then I'm going to have like a clearer mind or fewer thoughts when I'm sitting. And that is a recipe for disaster because that doesn't happen. what we end up doing is inquiring or viewing with curiosity the nature of dukkha, of suffering, the nature of the preoccupied mind, of the hamster wheel. But think of how much better it is to do that than to not even know you're on the hamster wheel. That's the ignorance part. That's what the Buddha is saying. That's the definition of you might as well be a hippo instead of a human being if you have no capacity for awareness. So that's what's happening. And over time, when we become comfortable with the discomfort of our humanness and our habits that are sometimes kind of cringy, those habits start to transform. Not because we're, beating ourselves up about it, but because we're actually bringing in friendliness and self-compassion and awareness of the difficulties of being human. This is all part of this practice. It's not, putting ourselves on a pedestal. It's actually, we're in the trenches with this, with everybody else. Okay, so it's really important. And then we can develop ways to stop and see throughout the day. And with time and practice, they occur kind of simultaneously. And you may notice that already, especially if you've been doing this for a while. So the mindfulness piece is the very first thing. Mindfulness means you are aware that you have a body. That's what mindfulness is. Like, you're aware of the situation and that you're a part of the situation. And you're experiencing that with curiosity and openness. That's all mindfulness is. You can stop there, which is sort of our mainstream way of presenting some of this material. But we go beyond that in this class. We use mindfulness as a very basic tool to be able to penetrate the deeper insights of the nature of clinging, because it's there that we can apply the antidotes to clinging and experience not just less suffering, but complete freedom from suffering. So, stopping there for today, and on that note, and see if there are comments or questions. In some ways, this could have been a introduction to meditation talk. Stop and see. And on another level, I've been practicing for 34 years, a long time. And when I read this, I thought, right, yeah, I'm learning something from this, because it's never just for beginners. So anyway, I throw that out there. It's wonderful for beginners to have this as a basic instruction. And the longer you've been practicing, the deeper the teachings penetrate into what you've been experiencing. So I would love to hear from anyone. If you're on Zoom, raise your yellow hand, please, in the reactions, and I'll see it more easily. Or questions, any basic questions about meditation practice. It's all fair game for this last part of class. Do you have the thing? Mm-hmm. Did you turn it on? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Can you test it and see if they can hear you?
Can you all hear me online?
Can you hear? Okay, great. Oh, Janet.
Oh, she's thumbs up.
Oh, you don't have okay. You raised your yellow hand. Okay, you did. Okay, what's a thumbs? I'm not wearing my glasses. Okay, that was me, not you. All right. Yes. Hold it close to your mouth. Thank you.
I do not do microphones well.
That's okay.
Anyway, my name is Nancy, and I liked what you said about mindfulness, being in your body, because I noticed something last night. My husband and I went to see the bike riders in the afternoon, and it's incredible, but very suspenseful and violent.
What's the bike riders?
It's based on a photograph and interview book of actual bikers, like motorcycle riders from the 60s.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Anyway, but it was suspenseful. So I got home and I was just like noticing I was holding something here. And so I started making dinner and I was just like noticing it more. And then I walk in from the deck because we were grilling, and my husband turned the TV on at the same time, and the volume was so loud.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, turn that down, please. And then, of course, he's like, and I'm like, and I was like, I need a moment. I said, I'm going to take the food off the grill, and I need a moment. I'm going to go upstairs. And one thing that my KM group buddy Jennifer had given me probably a year ago is a book by Pema Chodron called How We Live is How We Die.
Mm-hmm.
And towards the end of that book, there is a thing that she says about stopping and noticing in like your everyday life, and then saying to yourself something like this, which is a waking dream, which I interpret as, if I'm not completely present, the waking dream is the story in my head, right? And I don't know if that's the correct interpretation, but I just went upstairs and I sat there and I looked out the window and I just could feel myself. Yes, exactly that. It took no more than 10 minutes. And I came back down. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for dinner now, you know? And he knows I'm a weirdo, so he was just like, whatever. So yeah, I thought it just dovetailed really nicely with Gil's and your interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Even as you were telling the story about the bikers, my shoulders went up.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting that we do that.
Yes.
That we take on not just the stress, we take on the joy too, that we take on everything, that these bodies are they're like sponges for things. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually what makes us really human and able to connect with other people and experience. I don't know, the Olympics are about to happen, and I always have I love it because I get so happy and so upset when people, like don't make it. We heard their story and they tried. So like we're social beings. So how we take that stuff on is one of the things that when we stop, we notice. At the end of the day, we've taken on everything we've been through from the time we woke up to that moment. It's living in here. And can we be with that? Can we notice what's mine, what's not mine, and how to let go? So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Was this article a recent one by Gil Fronsdal or for some time?
No.
Okay.
2003.
Oh, nice. I would like to definitely read how he was interpreting. But when you were talking about Chinese way of interpreting in a way, it brought into my mind in Qigong, which is a Chinese way of kind of cultivating or managing the energy. There is a move called stopping the waves. And that's for the conditions sometimes like when we are addicted to something, for example. It could be something good or something bad, either way. We know that the energy is coming. And like literally, we cannot really stop the waves, but we are choosing to pause and then just doing something like that with the hands. Just hand is moving, you are withdrawing it back and then pushing like the palm away. And you repeat this many times just to stop the waves. Because the energy is there, habit or whatever we are struggling with at that moment. And then just pausing, not doing or not letting the wave in a way to rise up, but just like seeing, stopping and seeing. Article, I loved it, by the way. Thanks for sharing.
Sure. And I love Qigong too. A huge plug for Qigong. If you've never tried it, wow. It's a moving meditation.
Yeah.
And it is not as easy as it looks. I'll tell you that. Yes.
I just wanted to share a personal anecdote that I've had just a lot of external things piled up in my life this spring, and it's I don't know what I would have done without this practice. And at a recent KM group, I shared that I'm just learning that my peace is not dependent on my external events of my life, but I almost feel like I was saying that without feeling it in my body. And there's something about your talk today that just, it was like I could shake off some weight. Like I could experience that message, so I just wanted to thank you for that. And it just reminds me that your point about learning the messages of the practice again and again and again and feeling them at a deeper cellular experience is the remembering, why the practice has to be a practice and not just one insight, is that you can learn these things again and again and again and just feel them and experience them in a different way. So thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. If anyone is also not familiar with what a KM group is, it's been brought up twice. So I just wanted to clarify. Those are Kalyana Mitta groups, spiritual friends groups, which there's a couple that happen in this. They meet outside of class once a month, between 8 and 12 people or something. That where you sit together and then you share about your practice or on a specific topic of the practice. So sometimes we start up new KM groups. Sometimes they go for years and can be a really great way to have a small group of people that you move through life with. You may not see them outside of your KM group, but by gosh, once a month, you're sharing on a really kind of deep level with them. So thanks, Leslie. Yes.
Can I plug a KM group that needs members?
Please.
We have a KM group that needs members.
So talk a little louder. Okay.
We've only been meeting since last October, and we've had some ebb and flow with the members, but I think we're finally getting kind of set. But we only have 7 people, and we would be great if we could have more. But we meet Tuesdays at 1 p.m., which I know is not doable for a lot of people, but maybe there are some people. We're meeting every 3rd Tuesday. We just met this last Tuesday, so that means our next meeting is July 16th, I believe.
And where do you meet? We
meet in Tyson's, Vienna, or McLean. We've been kind of bopping around among public library and members' home. We're still trying to figure out what we like best. But please come and talk to me afterwards if you're interested at all.
Yeah, and we're recording too.
Yes.
So if you're listening to the recording and you're local and are interested in this Tuesdays at 1 p.m. once a month, you can email me and I will connect with you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Other observations, questions? In the back? Oh, hi.
Hi, my name is Anri. I am practicing exactly sensing in the body in this month, and just my curiosity and fear is that if we become more aware of our sensations, we can be even more vulnerable, or we can be more, how to say, sensitive to what we experience each day.
Yeah.
It makes us more difficult.
Yes.
I do practice, but I have that anxiety on the side,
Hmm.
and just wonder, what is your observation on that,
Yeah.
of sensing even more and more by pausing each day?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question, because it's a really important one. So did everyone on Zoom hear the question? Excellent. So when we come to this practice and we are agreeing that we're going to feel, we're going to be present with whatever is arising, including our body sensations, we really do, no matter who we are, need to take it kind of slowly and to trust yourself when you're practicing. If you're feeling, if the anxiety is really growing, to then have some self-compassion there and back down a little bit. So we know that our bodies are aware of things and have a really great way of protecting us from being flooded with overwhelm or difficulty or trauma by compartmentalizing things, putting them away. And so when we begin to meditate and we kind of calm the mind, one of the things that's happening is we're also calming that gatekeeper that keeps that stuff in its place so that we don't get overwhelmed. And so part of the practice is being aware that that's also happening, that we may start to feel things that we haven't felt in a while, or that are associated with certain thoughts or beliefs or something's rocking the boat, making us feel uneasy. And so a simple instruction is to kind of explore the edges around those sensations, and because now we're kind of connecting wires, so we might be having thoughts and emotions and all of that, to kind of explore around the edge, knowing that we don't have to get to the root of it in this moment. It's sort of, we're growing our capacity to be with what's here, so we can bring in the question, what is this sensation? How am I experiencing it? Can I be with it in this moment? And waiting for your body to answer that question, not your brain. It's like, can I be with this in this moment? And your body kind of will give you the feedback, yes or no, or maybe. And the maybe, then we can explore a little bit. Well, what else is present here? If we ever notice that we're really just getting overwhelmed with any kind of strong, difficult emotion, then we automatically come back to, well, my instruction would be to come back to the sensation of your body sitting, your feet on the floor, or your hands in your lap, and the simple movement of the breath, and kind of letting go of the story that is kind of fueling, the whole situation that's feeling really difficult. And as we're feeling into the body, to connect that with self-compassion. Just that, it's hard being human. There's a lot here. Sometimes we even just put our hand on our chest. There's a lot here. And I'm going to just kind of be in this moment with it. I almost sometimes say, just good job. You were able to just be in that moment for a few seconds and then let it go. And that's a lot different than pushing it back underground, right? Or running away. It's sort of like, good job, system. There's a bunch of us in here. And we're working with the whole team that's inside of us. And so it's like, good job. And we can come back to it later or not. But this is where the kind of see for yourself becomes really important, that you're able to discern in those moments, can I be with this? Or if the answer is no, then maybe we look for outside help of someone to work with us as we're exploring things, so that we, have a greater sense of our safety and stability in the moment when things are coming up. And there's lots of different therapeutic modalities that can help us with that, with the embodiment of things. So it's a really important question, because almost all of us are carrying something that eventually, when we're sitting in meditation, we realize it's the third rail. Like, we might not have even known it was there, but it's the like, no, you don't. Like, everything else is fine except this. Or so to know how to to work with those things with a lot of loving kindness and compassion. So that help? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure. In the front here.
I just figured I would mention, along with the whole becoming more sensitive thing, like that definitely does happen, but you can also notice a difference in how things feel. Like one of the things that I just have particularly noticed is there's a kind of qualitative difference between when you're sitting and feel like, oh, I just want to get up. Like there's a difference between the craving mind of I need to be doing something different versus an intuitive sense of the best thing for me right now is to actually get up and walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so like just noticing some of the differences there. If there's like an agitation to it, then okay, that's the clinging mind. I don't really need to do that. Versus I need to go outside and touch grass or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So you're describing the sort of wisdom component that arises with the practice when we do hit these, I call them the crunchy moments, where there's some kind of agitation is present, to be able to discern whether it's where it's coming from and how to most skillfully work with it. Yeah.
And also, how long does it actually last? Because when you were talking earlier, you mentioned, stopping the waves and all of that. And I've noticed, like, if I'm engaged in an activity for too long, like my mood will start to go down and I will notice this like craving sense of I want, and there isn't even a target for that thought. It is just, I want what? Food, buy something. Like none of that is actually going to help. But when you actually notice, how long does this actually last? It's usually not that long. It comes up and it goes away. And the same with that negative mood. It comes up and it'll go away. And yeah.
I like that. I like that. I like that little mantra of I want without inserting anything. See what you learn after 34 years? No, because a typical instruction might be to absolutely notice that craving is present. And often it's like specifically something like, I want to get out of here. I want to go eat something. But it's really all in the same category of, I just want, or I don't want, the two sides of that same coin. But it's almost more powerful to not fill in the blank because it's all craving.
And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I notice when that thought first arises, it is just a blank. And then the mind is looking for, okay, what is going to fill in this blank?
Yeah, then we try to fill it in with what we think might satisfy the craving. Ooh, this will be fun. I enjoy when these things come up because it just gives you the opportunity to work with something tangible. Yeah, so look forward to your next time you're hooked into wanting and we'll try this, I want, and then watch where the mind goes to try to satisfy its discomfort, and how easily we get plugged into our various, capital and lowercase a addictions. So yeah.
Or even justify.
Oh yeah, we justify them too. Of course. Of course I need a piece of chocolate. I just cleaned the kitchen. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Going once? In the back. Okay. Sold.
Hi, Matt. I couldn't help but draw a lot of parallels to your lecture today and to the practice itself, to what we do to stay in shape physically.
Mhm.
You know,
Hold your, there we go.
thanks. If a goal is, for example, to get to a point where I can bench press 200 pounds, I may not ever get there, and that's part of the loving kindness or the relaxation that we just do what we can. But as I work to get there, I might start today at 80 pounds, but within a few weeks maybe I'll be at 150. So it's like the anti-analogy of your tree waiting to bear fruit for years. You're actually getting benefit as you go along, and it's hard at first too, to the other speaker's point. But I also wanted to say I appreciate it. It was ironic how much I appreciated your the points you made today, because in my meditation this morning before you started, I realized that we call it practice for a reason, and I've only been practicing sporadically for a couple of years, so I'm fairly new. But I'm to the point where during a meditation, while it's guided, the teacher's voice helps me stay in the moment. But then when you let us just to ourselves with silence, I'd bring myself back, but then I go right out somewhere and bring myself back again. So I'm still working on that, and that's all part of the. I realized at that time it's okay. I'm practicing, and this is your allowance for that to happen, and for me to practice bringing it back was really helpful. Just like I was in the gym trying to lift more weight. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's helpful to everyone. You couldn't see it, but there were a lot of nodding heads during the silent part of the meditation. Yeah. Yeah, that's your time to notice. It's also a plug for using guided meditations skillfully. And there's a lot of people practicing with the apps, which I think are fantastic. I didn't really have them when I was learning to meditate, so I don't use them a lot, but I definitely see the benefit of having some. It's like putting those gutter guards at the bowling alley, right? So your ball can kind of stay in play a little bit, and then when the guards go down, it's like, oh, gutter, and especially depending on how you're feeling on any given day. There's a lot of agitation in the mind, then it could be really skillful to have some guidance. But do incorporate some times where you're just sitting and practicing on your own, because ultimately you can't rely on guided meditations, right? You want to be able to, this practice goes wherever your breath goes. So you could be anywhere and not have to, like, I wish I had a guided meditation. Yeah, so thank you. All right, we are at time. So thank you so much. And we'll see you the next time. All right, everyone, take care. Blessings.